and we are going to brief Senate Bill 5280 concerning the duty of clergy to report neglect. Allison Mendiola is staffing the bill, and it is sponsored by Senator Frame.
As you mentioned, before you is Senate Bill 5280, sponsored by Senator Frame. This bill has to do with mandated reporters, and those are people who are required to report neglect of a minor to law enforcement or the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. So currently, mandated reporters include a broad range of people within certain professions, including clergy. And currently, clergy means a regular licensed, accredited, or ordained minister, priest, or rabbi of any church or religious denomination, whether acting in an individual capacity or as an employee or agent. Under this bill, the definition of clergy is expanded, and it is clarified that the members of the clergy do not have a duty to report suspected child abuse or neglect if this information is obtained in the member's professional character as a religious or spiritual advisor when the information is obtained solely as a result of a confession made pursuant to the clergy penitent privilege, and that member of the clergy is authorized to hear such a confession and has a duty to keep the confession secret. Also under this bill, this does not apply if this does not apply if the member of the clergy has received the information from any source other than a confession. And in this case, the member of clergy is required to report the child neglect. And additionally, the clergy penitent privilege does not limit a member of the clergy's duty to report when the member of the clergy is acting in some other capacity that would otherwise require them to make a report, such as a coach, teacher, things like that. And there is no fiscal note to request, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Which frankly is a result of really good investigative reporting. Investigate West did a deep dive report on years of sexual that has gone unreported in a particular faith community here in Washington State because we don't have a mandated reporter law. In that particular faith community, the rule is if, unless compelled by law, religious leaders are to report allegations of to the church central office as opposed to reporting it to authorities. I know when I read that story, as did Representative Amy Wallen, who's the prime sponsor of the House Companion, we thought, let's solve that problem. Frankly, a problem that we didn't even know existed. And then I came to find out that we had tried to solve this problem 20 years ago. And my own state legislators, former Representative Mary Lou Dickerson and former Senator Jeannie Cole Wells, had prime sponsored that legislation. And it had gotten part of the way through the process, but had not passed. Folks, I bring this legislation before you today because children need to be able to trust adults. And they need to have trusted adults in their life that when they're being they can go to them and trust that they will help to make it stop. As I've shared publicly before, but I know some of my committee members, fellow committee members are just learning. I myself am a survivor of childhood. I was abused from the ages of 5 to 10 by a member of my own family, a teenage cousin. And in my own case, I didn't feel like I could tell anybody until first, I talked to a classmate who was herself being abused by her stepfather and told me I could tell a trusted adult and it would stop. And I did. I told a teacher, and the teacher was a mandated reporter. And they brought in my parents, and they told my parents, and the abuse stopped. Religious leaders have a very trusted, frankly, intimate relationship with the family members that are members of their faith community. And I frankly could imagine it being devastating for a religious leader to learn that a member of a family that they know is an but we have to prioritize the safety of those children, and we need to compel our religious leaders to report this when they know it's happening. And sadly, we know now the old stranger danger campaign of the 80s is not actually how abuse happens. Abusers are typically known to children, whether they're a family member, a friend, a coach, somebody else that has a trusted relationship with that child. We need more trusted adults available to our children. I think religious leaders can and should be that, and the law should back them up. We need religious leaders to be mandated reporters. And I will note, Allison mentioned the penitent clergy privilege. I was advised to exempt that because that was the major hurdle back in the 90s. I will note for the record, if my colleagues are willing to go there with me, I would happily amend the bill and include confession as part of the requirement for mandated reporting as well. And with that, I commend the bill to you and happy to answer any questions.
Members have any questions for Senator Frame? Thanks for bringing this important bill forward again. And Vice Chair Kaufman, would you like to call up? We have two panels.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So our first panel will be Christina De Leon, Larry Shannon, and Mario Villanueva.
If you come forward, we'll have 2 minutes, and that wonderful light will go from green to yellow to red. Thanks. Thanks. And Christiana, go ahead, and why don't you begin?
All right, thank you, Senator. And good morning, Senators. It's wonderful to get to testify with you in person, especially, even though I really enjoyed the opportunity to do remote as well. So this is just wonderful to be here with you today. I am here as a constituent, and also I'm a board member of the Association of Secular Elected Officials. ASCO is a 501c3 network for elected officials who do not hold theistic or other supernatural beliefs and who seek to govern and advance policy based on evidence, reason, and compassion. I'm also a public school employee. In my mind, once a mandated reporter, always a mandated reporter, because during my time as an educator, I understood the tremendous responsibilities surrounding child welfare. While we know that mandatory reporting is far from perfect, this system can often be a first or even a last line of defense to prevent heart-wrenching if only stories. Children and other vulnerable individuals should be able to trust the adults who care for them. And tragically, we do know that that's not always the case. Similarly, doing no harm should come from a place of compassion and altruism rather than as a legal requirement. Doing the right thing for the right thing's sake is surely not unique to the secular community. After all, there are many within the religious community who share a spirit of community care as a basic responsibility that comes with sharing a planet together. However, mandated reporting is a stopgap against the bystander effect that can get the best of us. Therefore, I urge passing of this bill, but if and only if the Senate passes the version of this bill that is concurrent with what is modified out of committee in House Bill 1098. That is, it's imperative that we strike the language from the bill that gives a dangerous loophole in the form of confessional exceptions. We must strike this element. Otherwise, we're simply creating a new loophole instead of closing one. The idea that there would be an asterisk for such a critical requirement should not sit well with us. This would be akin to during student conferences as a teacher, if a child were to, or a parent were to disclose something, but that was not exempt to the rule. So I urge us to pass it, but only in the case of requiring that confessional be added and not exempt.
For the record, could you please identify yourself?
Thank you. I'm Christiana De Leon. I live in Black Diamond, Washington.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Larry Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Larry Shannon, representing the Washington State Association for Justice, and here to speak in strong support of this bill. I believe that I want to thank the sponsor for her work, and I'm going to apologize in advance that I haven't been able to talk to her about adding on to what my colleague to the left just very ably testified to. Unfortunately, we have heard about and we know the need for this bill. It's a loophole that exists today that is resulting in impacts that are so destructive and of people's lives in a way that many never recover from. And I have to say, as a practicing Catholic, I've seen this up close and personal, and I've seen friends who've gone through what I consider to be the ultimate betrayal. The relationship trust that exists there is one that, when it's you never recover from. I do want to speak to the amendment, if I may, for a moment. Clearly, I understand, and in our faith, of course, the confessional is considered obviously sacred and sacrosanct. But there is a separation that we recognize between civil law and canon law in this country. And I think we should in this state. And many of the states that have enacted this have made that distinction. Those ministers, priests, clergy, whomever they are, who are, and the definition's interesting and very good in this bill in terms of whom it encompasses, they can still observe, and many of them still will observe, their canon law obligation. But the civil law, as what you just heard, and I just want to re-echo that and say, should not recognize that protection. I think it's essential that we extend that protection, not create this loophole. I commend the prime sponsor for her great work on this and her courage in bringing it forward. We would urge you to adopt that amendment and move this bill forward. Thank you so much for hearing me. Happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Bingo, right there in 2 minutes. You are a practiced soul, I might say. Any questions? All right, here we go. Mario, you are up.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Wilson and members of the committee. My name is Mario Villanueva, and I am the Executive Director for the Washington State Catholic Conference, the public policy voice of the Catholic Bishops of Washington. The bishops will always be supportive of efforts by the state legislature and state agencies to strengthen safeguards for health, safety, and welfare of our children by establishing clear requirements for reporting instances of child abuse. After I was approached by the prime sponsor of the House Companion Bill 1098, asking for us to support the bill, we signed in pro since we do support mandatory reporting of child and neglect outside the clergy-penitent relationship. Unfortunately, we were blindsided by an amendment in the House executive session that would eliminate the longstanding clergy-penitent privilege. The original language in HB 1098 upheld the clergy-penitent privilege supported by our federal constitution and state law. The clergy penitent privilege has been upheld by the Supreme Court since 1818. Language at line 17 on page 8 of Senate Bill 5280 clearly refers to RCW 5.60.0603 that protects the clergy penitent privilege referenced in state law. As I have stated, we believe the U.S. Constitution, the First Amendment also support this privilege. It is our understanding that the clergy penitent privilege is one of several evidentiary privileges in Washington law dating back to territorial days before statehood. In addition, there has been no thoughtful, deliberative process regarding the clergy penitent privilege in the context of all other privileges currently under state law. I'm raising this matter now with serious concerns about what occurred in the House Executive Committee session on House Bill 1098. On behalf of the Washington bishops, I am requesting that this not occur in your deliberation on this bill, and that the clergy penitent privilege in the bill be maintained. We are currently seeking a solution for the overreach that occurred in the House. In closing, there is no justification for the rash elimination of the longstanding clergy penitent privilege, the one evidentiary privilege that is founded upon the concept of freedom of religion. We thank you very much for your attention to this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. All right, we have any questions for the three panelists who are in person? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up.
And Madam Chair, we do have Sarah Young, who will be joining us via remote.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much. I wanted to speak with you guys today. I was raised one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I actually currently still am, although I am considered inactive. I wanted to talk to you about what this bill would look like for children who are currently in the organization. So for someone like myself, it took 4 separate reports throughout my childhood to actually get access to services outside of our congregation. Most children have to wait until they're 18 and legal adults to access any type of therapy or really any contact with social services, because we are a very insular community. I am 100% in support of this bill. Most of Jehovah's Witnesses are homeschooled, and our religious teachings are that anything outside of our community is in the hands of the devil. And of course, that makes children not really opt to get support for themselves. So I am in 100% support. It really needs to happen for the sake of children who are too young to consent to being in this religion. Their parents put them in this, and it can be a good upbringing if there are protections there. And it is up to our government and local government to enforce that children who are unable to consent to a 2-person rule, to not accessing help, that there are some safeguards there. And that's all. Thank you.
Sarah, for the record, can you let us know who you are? Identify yourself, just for the record.
Yeah, of course. My name is Sarah Young.
All right, thank you so much, and thanks for coming to testify today.
So much.
You're welcome. And with that, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 5280, clergy and child reporting.